Here's one of the biggest challenges as an established entrepreneur that I think no one really talks about. And it's one of the biggest things that makes the difference between someone who builds exactly the company and the life that they want versus someone who gets stuck at a certain level, right? They can make it to, let's say, $1 million a year in their business and revenue, but they can't really get past that. And so the challenge is that when you're starting out, there's a roadmap for everything. There's a course, maybe there's a workshop, there's a book. There are tons of resources on how to go from 0 to 1 and from 0 to 2, or from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 2. But once you hit a certain level, your expectations grow. And now it's not just about how do I get to 10K a month, how do I get to 50K a month, 100K a month, but it's also about, hey, I actually want to do something I enjoy. I want to do something that is aligned with my nature, with my life goals, what I want my life to look like, what I want to learn, right? What are my pitfalls? What are my weaknesses? All that stuff, right? The further you get ahead in the journey, the less resources there are, and they're harder to find. And so while there are a ton of resources on how to make your first $1,000, the first $100,000, whatever it might be, it becomes less and less when it comes to 1 to 10 million, and then from 10 to 100, right? The challenging thing is that there's no longer advice where it's like, this is what you do. It is all about, well, it depends. And so it's funny when I see entrepreneurs who are doing well, right? They have a multi-million-dollar business, they're making some profit, but I hear them say things like, well, but so-and-so said I should do this. And, oh, on the last call, you said I should do that. And actually, I always know, no, that's what I didn't say, because I never would tell anyone what they should do, because I work with established entrepreneurs. They don't need advice. And who am I to give them advice? I'm not an advice guy. I'm not a business expert guy. But I challenge certain perspectives, right? But they're still in this mindset of like, what should I do? What is the advice, right? But the more sophisticated you get, the more it is about, well, it depends. What does it depend on? And so what should you do in that stage when, frankly speaking, there isn't really any advice that applies to you anymore? What you should be doing is get really clear on how to make decisions for yourself. And that's the differentiator between entrepreneurs who can build $1 million business and they can force their way there, but they never make it beyond, and people who can frankly build anything they want because they've built their decision-making apparatus. And now the insects are going wild. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm just sitting out here at a pickleball court. Love pickleball, by the way. If you want to play here in Austin, let me know. But it is a skill to learn about who am I? How do I think? How do I make decisions? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What are my pitfalls? What are my biases? What's my nature? And therefore, what advice applies to me? And also, what do I want? What do I not want? What am I good at? What am I not good at, right? Because you can have someone like Elon Musk say certain things, give certain advice, here's what you should do, but you know that that doesn't apply to you because you're fundamentally different in some way. And then you have someone else who's a lot more like you, but they have completely different life goals. At a certain stage, it's no longer about what advice should I get, but it's not about getting any advice. It's about collecting different perspectives and then forming your own hypothesis based on that, filtering it through your own nature and what applies to you, right? And how does this apply to me? And so I think the founder of Spotify, he said this, that he's not a CEO in his business anymore. He has a co-CEO or something like that, but he's essentially a coach inside the company. He knows that none of the advice applies to anyone ever, because it always depends on who are you and how does this apply to you. And he's essentially learned that everyone's different, and one advice that you give one person is the opposite of what someone else should hear. And it's the same thing for you, right? And we always default to what we would naturally be drawn toward anyway. And it's oftentimes the wrong thing because that's the stuff that we've already done. If you're someone who's always doubling down on let's just do the same thing over and over again, you probably don't need to hear the advice of just like, hey, just stay consistent and, keep doing what you're doing. On the flip side, if you're like me and you're high in quick start and you just like to innovate and change things and always come up with new ideas, someone who has a very juicy new strategy or idea that they enroll you into, you probably need to go, hey, stop, wait, that's a pitfall for me. And you need to know that about yourself, because if you don't, you will keep looking for outside strategies that work on paper, but they won't work for you because it's the exact opposite of what you need. It's the exact opposite bottleneck that you have. You will continue to make bad decisions and low quality decisions if you keep taking advice that sounds good, but it's the wrong advice for you. How do you know? You need to learn about yourself. You need to learn about yourself. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? What is your nature? What is your superpower? What is your super weakness? What is your ultimate pitfall, right? And then also, one of the most important things, what do you want? Do you want to build that business? And essentially, that's when it comes down to a lot of the advice is just terrible advice because it's coming from the wrong person. They're a completely different personality type, right? If you listen to the advice from Gary Vee, it's the opposite of someone like Sam Ovens, who's very methodical and very much like, hey, don't do any fancy stuff. And then Gary Vee is like, hey, get up on stage, do a bunch of stuff, like post everywhere. It's the opposite. Which one should you listen to? It depends. You need to know that for yourself. You need to build your own decision-making apparatus, your own filter mechanism, and learn about yourself. And until you do that, you will keep making random decisions that just sound good on paper. I always hate it when people say, oh, that's good advice. How do you know? How do you know it's good advice? Have you implemented it? Or does it just sound good? You can never tell if something's good advice until you've tried it and it actually gets results. If you think it'd be valuable for you to discover what that is for you and get more self-awareness and learn about your pitfalls, strengths, and weaknesses, then hop on a call. Just join the community. I have a one-on-one call with everyone, and I'll see you in there.